Most fighters spend their entire lives trying to get to the UFC. It takes a combination of elite skills, dedication, and honestly, a bit of luck sometimes. Or, apparently just being a little bit famous. The UFC matchmakers have proven that sometimes it doesn't matter if you're the best fighter, as long as you're willing, a little bit recognizable, and might possibly be able to sell some tickets. YouTube sensations, stars from other sporting worlds, even trying to reinvent old fan favorites, they've tried it all, and more often than not, it's about as successful as a power slap league. I'm Bailey, and from MMA On Point, and these are 10 failed UFC experiments. Number 10, Tony Harm. Look, I don't actually find it that surprising that in the 1990s the UFC signed a pro wrestler. Like, it was definitely real back then, right? I mean, that shit worked at school. I got about 5 friends who broke something RKOing each other on the trampoline. The 300-pound Helsinki native was actually the first Nordic fighter to enter the octagon. He'd spent some time as the Gladiator Viking on the Finnish version of the show, Gladiators, before entering the WWF under the name Ludwig Borger. He was even in Die Hard with a Vengeance. He was also not a nice person and had several tattoos associated with the Nazi Party, which makes what happened to him in the UFC all the more satisfying, to be honest. After retiring from pro wrestling, he joined the promotion Rings and had 3 fights in Japan. He lost all 3 of them in the first round, all by stoppage. But the UFC decided to sign him anyway, I guess because he was a massive dude and had at the very least some sort of name behind him. But yeah, despite also actually being an accomplished boxer, he had no real MMA ability, and who better to save the day than Captain America, who was also making his UFC debut. And what a way to do it. Tony ran at Randy, he took him down immediately, and that was pretty much it. He choked him out in just under a minute. Play the theme song. America, fuck yeah! Number 9, Jason Thacker. Oh, Strange Brew, what did MMA do to you? The first season of The Ultimate Fighter was full of crazy ideas. Random team challenges that had absolutely nothing to do with martial arts. Apparently not even telling the contestants that they would be fighting each other. And the idea to throw in a guy who had absolutely no training whatsoever. It was an experiment of sorts. Anyway, one to just kind of add to the entertainment of the show. Hey everybody, look at this guy. Doesn't he suck? Jason Thacker stuck out like a sore foot.
I did it! We're safe!
He was essentially there to show what it meant to be an ultimate fighter, because Strange Brew just wasn't it. The producer said he gave him a shot because of his crazy training footage, hitting bags of sand and smashing hay bales. Actually, that kind of sounds like Tony Ferguson.
Oh. No blood.
It did, however, lead to good ratings. Mauro Ranallo literally said, "I feel for Jason Thacker because he was put in a position to fail." And fail he did, exactly the way the UFC intended. Well, the man in the hat, Chuck Mindenhall, scoured the earth to find him years later and wrote a piece for MMA Fighting titled In Search of Strange Brew. After the show, people were starting fights with him in bars, harassing his family. He admitted he had no MMA experience at all and is essentially still traumatized by the whole event. It's hard not to feel for the guy. This is one experiment that definitely failed. Number 8, James Toney. There's been a lot of MMA fighters who've taken on boxers at this point, and I'm not just talking about Triller Triad Combat.
Big right hand, Mir's hurt. He's out on his feet. He's out on his feet. Left hook. He's out on his feet. What is Bergliano doing?
The fights have gone mostly how you would expect, and wouldn't it be nice if we had some boxers that actually stepped up and came over to MMA? Well, one man did. James Toney, a boxing world champion in 3 different weight classes, at one point 44-0 and one of the best defensive fighters in history. Now, this one was kind of designed to fail, I'm not gonna lie. It was a big coming out party for MMA at the time. Let's hoist the flag. We're better than boxing. Honestly, I don't know why Toney even agreed to this one. He basically had no chance. Oh, money, yeah, that'll do it. Well, the community were pretty concerned at first.
James Toney, explain to them why you decided to do this.
I honestly can't explain it myself. I'm the first guy to cry freak show and everything else. Will it be a freak show? No.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, Dana. But to be fair, he did say MMA fighters are better than boxers, and well, Toney took the bait.
Dana White said MMA fighters are better than boxers. I had to put a hold to it. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we're here.
James, a good friend of yours, David Hayes, says you're delusional for fighting in MMA.
He's gay.
Anyway, he tracked down Dana and got himself a fight with a Greco-Roman Olympian, no less. To be fair, there weren't many guys the same age as James, really, and things went just as expected. Joe, why don't you explain this one?
Randy Couture ankle picked him, took him down, strangled him.
Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. Potatoes.
Number 7, Greg Hardy. So the signing of the former NFL star Greg Hardy was already controversial enough after he was found guilty for assaulting his girlfriend, but the case was dismissed when she didn't appear in court. This led to his removal from the NFL. So in 2016, he started an MMA career and picked up 3 wins at the amateur level before being invited into Dana White's Contender Series. I mean, this guy at least had some experience, but you're making your pro debut on a UFC show, so yeah. He had 2 quick KOs on the show, but Dana still didn't give him a contract. He said he needed to get more work in, and he was definitely right. But after another sub 60-second KO on the regional scene, Dana brought him into the promotion at just 3-0. So how would the Greg Hardy experiment unfold? Well, he got DQ'd in his first fight, so it's not a great start, but he got 2 TKOs in the first round against, well, nobody's pretty much as well, I guess. Then there was that whole thing where he used an inhaler during a fight and his decision got turned into a no contest, which is, yeah, pretty understandable.
You can't do that. Fight's over.
Honestly, after 7 UFC fights, he was 4-3-1. So I mean, not terrible, but not really the same level of success he'd had in the NFL. And then everything went downhill. He was finished 3 fights in a row, and well, despite being a 6'5" super athlete,
320 pounds, ladies and gentlemen.
the Greg Hardy experiment had run its course, and he wasn't re-signed to the promotion. But hey, I mean, I hear he's going to BKFC. Number 6, Gokhan Saki. Okay, so it's not completely unheard of for kickboxers to transition their way into MMA. In fact, some of them have even made their way to UFC champion, but most, in fact, pretty much all of them didn't start their careers in the UFC, well, apart from Gokhan Saki. Now, okay, that's not technically true because the K1 and Glory champion had an MMA fight way back in 2004 in a regional promotion in the UK, long before he'd fought for any major kickboxing promotion. I don't think you can even watch this fight anywhere. I don't think it was even recorded. Anyway, flash forward 13 years and Gokhan Saki decides that he's going to take a break from kickboxing and give MMA another go. I mean, to be fair, his stand-up was world class and many fans were actually super hyped he was coming over. I mean, at the very least, they weren't going to feed him any grapplers, right? The UFC booked him on a fight night against Henrique da Silva, who was on a 3-fight losing streak and was basically a human punching bag, well, until Gokhan got tired and then managed to pull out a Hail Mary TKO. And then they gave him another striker next, Khalil Roundtree. But it took him just 1 shot to sit Gokhan down, and he had no defense for the follow-up ground and pound. He was booked for another fight a year later but pulled out with an injury, and it wasn't until 2021 where he was asked to be released from his contract entirely due to the injuries he kept getting in training. Well, I mean, 1-1 is not awful, I guess, but yeah, I mean, this one was over before it even started. Number 5, Kimbo Slice. YouTube has certainly come a long way in the last 15 years, and if you want an example, look no further than the evolution of Kimbo's backyard brawls to street beefs, which is now a legit promotion, right? Well, back in 2005 there wasn't much on YouTube, but watching Kimbo Slice engage in some mutual combat was probably one of the most entertaining things you could see. He eventually got picked up by the Elite XC, where he won 3 fights before getting TKO'd in 14 seconds by Seth Petrozelli and then collapsing the whole promotion. There was a lawsuit, Seth was told not to take him down. It's a whole thing. But after that, he shocked everyone when he appeared as a surprise contestant on Tough 10. Look, the dude was a jacked bare-knuckle KO artist. Who wasn't going to watch that? Actually, I can think of one person.
It's not very nice, is it?
But it became immediately clear from his first fight, where he was matched horrifically with big country Roy Nelson, who tickled him from the crucifix position, that he definitely was not an MMA fighter. And you know, the UFC is kind of mixed martial arts, right? Still, they didn't give up on Kimbo and brought him into the UFC to fight Houston Alexander, a monster of a man. And they sadly had one of the most boring fights in UFC history. Yeah. They gave him one more shot against Matt Mitrione, but Kimbo was TKO'd in the second round, and so the Kimbo experiment just kind of ended. Was it successful? Well, I suppose in a way. The Tough season was the highest rated ever, but the real test was actually fighting, and he kind of failed at that. Number 4, Sean Gannon. So, Kimbo was pretty good at street fighting. I mean, that was kind of the appeal. He was undefeated and most people just had no chance and got destroyed almost immediately. But not Sean the Cannon Gannon, a Boston police officer. A post appeared on the MMA Underground saying Kimbo was accepting fights and Sean signed up. He fought Kimbo in this weird underground gym and he took it to him, exhausting Kimbo, being the first man to ever beat him, even if half his team did keep stopping the fight. So, guess what the UFC did? They gave him a fight! Well, first of all, we had 3 fights on the regional scene and went 2-1 against, well, nobodies and people making their own debuts, but that was enough for the matchmakers to decide in 2005 they would start the Sean Gannon experiment.
Preparation H.
and bring the tough as nails Boston Cop into the professional fighting promotion. He was unfortunately drastically underqualified for what Brandon Lee Hinkle brought to the table though. He immediately began grappling and took Sean down. Once on top position, he was dropping ground and pound until the ref just stopped the fight. If you'd come to see the Cannon that night, you probably went home disappointed.
I'm ready. Depression.
Number 3, Kit Cope. Look, I don't mean to keep bringing up YouTube, but
We live here.
well, I'm sure that's what 50% of you guys watch these days. But before then, you know, we had actual television channels, and in the US, MTV was probably one of the best, from music to extreme sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's MTV Sports.
Frickin' Jackass, you know, there was a lot to enjoy.
I'm a nice man. Save us. That's not Christian.
If you watched the show True Life, which covered all kinds of subcultures and societies, you might have seen the episode with Kit Cope and his journey to Thailand to compete in a bare-knuckle left-wave fight. So, guess what? The guy's a reality star. Yeah, he's only 2-2 in MMA, but that's at least something. Let's get him in the UFC. Goldberg announced him as the cream of the crop in Muay Thai and one of the best strikers in the world. Good thing they gave him Kenny Florian. You know, he's not a BJJ black belt and one of the best submission artists in the division.
With professional Ultimate Fighter Kenny Florini.
This was an experiment, if ever I saw one, okay? He actually stuffed a few takedowns at first, but once he got him down, it was basically all over. He even tapped after the bell went in round 1, so basically started round 2 with a broken arm and got submitted in 30 seconds. He didn't get another UFC fight either. Number 2, Tank Abbott 2.0. You know, it's probably worth remembering that Tank Abbott actually got the first proper KO with a punch in UFC history at UFC 6. That, combined with his street fighting background, and probably because his name was Tank, let's be honest, made him an early UFC star. But the guy always lost in the finals of the early UFC tournaments. In fact, he never won a fight after it went past 3 minutes. Like, ever. Okay, one decision. Basically though, in 1998, 3 years into his UFC run, he was 8-7 and a little too partied out. By the end of the fight with Pedro Hizzo, he looked like Santa Claus the day after Christmas if he'd been leg kicked 100 times. He took a well-deserved retirement. Well, he actually went and wrestled with the WCW for a bit. But the UFC weren't quite done with him yet. They decided in 2003 it was time to reinvent Tank Abbott and bring him back to the heavyweight division. He was back with a leather jacket and saying badass things like, "You can be as technical as you want, but you can still be a pussy." He may also have been on amphetamines. Either way, he was supposed to be this returning gladiator, fan favourite. To be fair, the crowd did go mental, but he got tapped out in 46 seconds against Frank Mir, 2 minutes by Kimo Leopoldo. All that was left was to put on one of the sloppiest fights of all time with Wes Cabbage, and the doctor stopped that one due to a cut. Tank tried to start a brawl in the cage, and the 2.0 experiment was over. And number 1, CM Punk. Well, I mean, who else are we going to put at number 1?
All right, fuck you.
Look, honestly, CM Punk said to himself one day, hey, MMA is real fighting, not pro wrestling. I'm going to give that a go. Which, you know, in some ways is pretty commendable, and he did take it seriously. He sought out a good team and trained the proper way. But at the same time, he had 0 amateur MMA experience, 0 combat sports experience, and he was joining the biggest fight promotion in the world on a platform that people grind their entire lives to reach.
All right, fuck you.
So understandably, a lot of people were pissed. And in a way, this kind of was the dumbest experiment of all time. I mean, what the hell did people think was going to happen? That he was secretly a superhero and his WWE wrestling moves would actually work in the cage? Come on, guys. I mean, he could barely throw a punch.
All right, fuck you.
But he still got in there, I guess, against Mickey Gall, literally the only guy they could find and could justify bringing into the UFC at just 1-0. And boy, did it not go well. I mean, he got taken down immediately, beaten up, and tapped in just 2 minutes. But you know, the pay-per-view did 500,000 buys, and I'm sure he helped contribute to that. He didn't fight again in the UFC until 2 years later, but unfortunately hadn't really shown any more growth at all during that time. MMA journalist turned fighter Mike Jackson kind of played with him, and the unanimous decision win was turned into a no contest because of weed. That's a shame, isn't it? God, bloody hell. I'm just going to say it probably won't be the last WWE fighter to try their hand at MMA, but I think the UFC learnt their lesson on this one.
So, I mean, deal with it, tough guys. If you got a problem, come find me, you know, because chances are everybody on the internet that says that this pro wrestler shouldn't be anywhere near MMA, I can probably kick your ass.
All right, there we go. Another video. Thank you, Luke. You edited this one well, I think. I haven't seen it yet. I'm doing this in the recording booth, so I have no idea. He probably did a good job. I mean, if you think you did a good job, you can go and follow him at cool2me_, which I would do anyway, because he's kind of cool. Yeah, he's all right. What have you done with your life? Probably not written an intro theme song for a popular MMA YouTube channel. You know who has though? Ben Rosette, he did that for us. Yeah, mate, we still use it because it's a good, funky little tune, isn't it? Anyway, if you want to support him, you can find more of his music on Spotify at Ben Rosette. Okay, before you start commenting, Paulo Costa's secret juice does not count as a UFC experiment, alright? But if you have any other thoughts about the people that failed or didn't, let us know. We've got the comments box down below. Shout at me. I don't care. I will read them though, probably, maybe. Go on. If you had fun though, give us a like, much appreciated. And if you want to see more, just subscribe. They'll appear automatically in your feed. That's how YouTube works. I've been Bailey, and thank you for watching. See you in the next one.